This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, Death by Southwest listeners. Welcome back to another episode of Death by Southwest. It is Tuesday, April 29th, and we are on episode 104. So, without further ado, we're going to jump right in. And I have a little teaser for today's story. A solo road trip, a sudden silence, a car found teetering off over a cliff, and a family left with more questions than answers. This is the story of Caitlyn Case, a journey that began with hope and ended in a haunting mystery. This is a tough one today, guys. This one really got me. And again, I don't know why I always say that because they're all tough. And I feel especially a little kind of like skeezy for doing this today because, as I have talked about recently, don't worry, I'm getting into the story in 2 minutes. But I was on doing some just kind of like last minute fact checking on Reddit and web sleuths today for this case because I really had to dig on this one. It was not publicized nearly enough. There's hardly any podcasts that have covered it. So I'm hoping that at the very, very least doing this, I mean, not that we have a huge listenership, but that it gets the word out a little bit more is all that I can hope. But while I was doing this kind of last minute fact checking on Reddit, I saw so many people posting in true crime communities on there about how, true crime is so gross and it's so, it's like the microphone comes in front of my face sometimes and I lose all of my language abilities. I can't think of any of I have a pretty good vocabulary. Somehow I get down in front of the microphone and it all disappears because I can't think of the word, but just that it's like, what I talked about before, that if I had a family member or even a friend who had been killed or murdered or involved in some type of crime and I heard strangers podcasting about it for profit, I'd be pissed and grossed out. And it just feels kind of like sleazy. And with that said, let's jump into today's true crime story. That is what we're going to do, but I don't know. It's something I wrestle with. It really is. And I just want to be honest about that. It's something that I kind of go back and forth about. I do think that although I know everyone, including myself, enjoyed these episodes with Jenna on them or with Mark or with Michael, I do think that sometimes it's a little bit more disrespectful because inevitably we end up having side conversations or being lighthearted through some of it. And nobody's family members or friends want to listen to that. I certainly wouldn't. So doing it at least by myself, I feel like I'm able to be a little bit more respectful of the victims and their families, hopefully. I don't know why I'm justifying this because if you're listening to this, you like true crime, and I don't need to justify it to you. So let's stop this conversation and jump right in. Story takes place in a bunch of different places today, several different places today. So I'm going to do a really brief, just kind of overview on some of them. Our victim, Caitlyn Case, she was at the time living in Black Hawk, Colorado, which is nestled right in the Rocky Mountains. It's about 35 miles west of Denver, and it is known for its casinos. There's only about 127 people who live there. So it really is, people don't really live there. People go there to the casinos, basically. It also was a very significant place during the gold rush for mining. And the rest of our story really takes place in and around the Texas-Oklahoma border, which there is a location there called Lake Texoma area. So Lake Texoma doesn't have a population, but the surrounding area attracts between 6 and 9 million visitors annually. It's kind of straddling the border between Texas and Oklahoma, situated on the Red River, northwest of Denison, Texas, and southwest of Durant, Oklahoma. It's so when I first was reading about Lake Texoma, I just glanced over some of these listed facts that I found, and I thought it said the stripper capital of the world, but it's actually striper capital of the world due to the thriving striped bass population. So it's a popular place for boating, fishing, and camping. Another location that we'll visit today is Paris, Texas, located in northeast Texas at the western edge of the Piney Woods. It's about 105 miles northeast of Dallas. Again, I understand that if you're not looking at a map, at least the way my brain works, if I'm listening to someone and they're like, it's located 105 miles northeast of Dallas, I'm not even able to necessarily picture where Dallas is on a map unless I'm looking at the map. So, but some of you may have much far more brilliant minds than mine, and you can picture all of this as I'm saying it. So I'll continue. So it's about 105 miles northeast of Dallas. And in 2020, the population was around 24,000. It is known for its replica of the Eiffel Tower, which is topped with a red cowboy hat, symbolizing the unique blend of Texan and French influences. We also visit Bogota, Texas, population of about 1,100. It's named after Bogota, Colombia. It's a small city in the Red River County, and it has a history rooted in agriculture, 20 miles southeast of Paris, Texas. And when we discuss all of these, I'll remind you kind of where they are, just in case that matters to anyone. And then the final place that we're going to visit today is called Frogville, Oklahoma. It's an unincorporated community, so I have no population data, but there's not a lot of people there. It's located in southeastern Oklahoma, very close to the Texas border. And it was named Frogville due to the abundance of frogs in the area. Shocker, I know. They were said to be so large at one point in history that they ate young ducks, which is really more likely a colorful anecdote. There's no kind of scientific corroboration for this, but it's part of the town's folklore. The American bullfrog is very popular in Oklahoma, and it's known for its voracious appetite, and it eats a lot of different things, including birds and small mammals. But the claim about frogs eating ducks specifically in Frogville, it's not necessarily verified. So none of that matters to this story, but I thought it was interesting. So let's jump right in and get to know Caitlyn Case, because before her name ever made it into the missing persons database or true crime headlines, Caitlyn Rose Case was a bright girl from Houma, Louisiana. No idea if I'm saying that correctly, but that's what I'm going with. She was described as artistic, sensitive, and a little mysterious in the best kind of way. The time of our story, she's 33. She was born on January 25th, 1989 in Louisiana, Houma, Louisiana, which is about an hour southwest of New Orleans. She graduated from Terrebonne High School in 2007 and then followed her creative instincts to Memphis College of Art in Tennessee. Side note, Tennessee is one of the most beautiful states I've ever driven through. So if you ever have an opportunity to go to or drive through Tennessee, I found it to be breathtaking. Caitlyn's family members and friends remember her as warm, loving, and full of light, a person who made you feel seen, even if you only met them in passing. Caitlyn wasn't just soft and sweet, though. She was also emotionally and spiritually deep. She was a self-proclaimed free spirit, and she had a fascination with astrology, spirituality, and the unseen forces that thread our lives together, which is a line that I just love. And something that kind of supported this, because There wasn't a ton of information about her. Certainly not in her younger years or growing up. I have nothing, but just her, like I said before, her name was in true crime headlines. There wasn't much, but her social media, her digital footprint, it did help to paint a pretty vivid picture of who she was. What I really liked is that her social media was never like this perfectly curated, where all the colors match. You've seen the social media accounts like that. It was more like a journal or like a sacred space for her. She did have a lot of social media. She had 7 Facebook accounts and 3 Instagram profiles. Each of these accounts were layered with quotes and clever captions and photos that hinted at a kind of deeper emotional world and connection that she wanted. Her bios offered like little poetic breadcrumbs. I'm going to read you a few. Quote, death before life, redemption after deliverance, still shining like the sun. I'll be completely honest. I do not understand that one. So if you do, I'd love to hear from you. Death before life. I don't know. This isn't a philosophy podcast, so don't worry. I'm not getting into it. The next one was sending positive vibrations. Namaste. Another one said, 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. In one very personal video post on her social media, she filmed herself singing in the bathtub quietly, and she explained that she was honoring a loved one who'd passed away. The caption read, learning obstacles without your presence is life without life. Aquarius love, miss you, Mimi. I see and hear you dancing in the sky. Obviously, it's a very personal message because it doesn't completely make sense to me, which it doesn't need to. But it hurt my heart a little bit because if you've ever lost somebody, for me, hearing people getting all choked up already, first 10 minutes, hearing people talk about missing their loved ones, inevitably, or I guess I could say selfishly, makes me think about my loved ones that have passed. So while Caitlyn's online presence did tend to radiate positivity and peace, her life behind the scenes wasn't always filled with tons of peace. Again, not a ton of information on this, but there are some reports from locally from where she lived that showed that she had a history of some legal troubles going back just over a decade. Her first DUI was in 2009 when she was just 20 years old. And there were, numerous, I don't want to say small or big, there were numerous issues over the years. In 2021, she was arrested for failure to appear in court after a reckless driving ticket, possession of drug paraphernalia, criminal damage to property, and resisting arrest. But details around this arrest and any other incidents are pretty scarce. A lot about kind of, I don't want to assume, but I would imagine she was having some personal struggles if she's having this much trouble with the law. It's unknown, but it did seem to kind of follow her around like a shadow. And there have been some people who speculated that this entire story didn't get the media coverage that it should have, perhaps because of people judging her for her past. I have no idea if that's true, but just throwing it out there, which if it is true in any way, it's absolutely just disgusting to me. Somebody's past should not determine how much, media coverage or effort their disappearance or murder or anything gets. So by the summer of 2022, Caitlyn seemed determined to leave her past behind and have a fresh start. Although she had a background in art, she'd recently pivoted into engineering, and she landed a job that she was really excited about. She was going to be a technical mechanic at the Lodge Casino in Black Hawk, Colorado. And like I said, Black Hawk is about an hour outside of Denver, tucked high into the Rocky Mountains. According to Caitlyn's family, she was thrilled about this new job, and she just wanted to take so much pride in it and do a great job and kind of have a new, fresh beginning. And it wasn't just work that brought Caitlin to Colorado. She also had family there. She had brothers, Christian and Claude, who were already living there and running a construction company together. So, with family close by and a job she enjoyed, it really seemed like Caitlin was kind of like laying a foundation for a life that she always wanted. So, after she'd been in Colorado for about a month working, she decided it was time for a quick trip back to Louisiana. She wanted to visit her family and friends for sure, but she also needed a new car. And she knew someone back home who was selling a 2006 GMC Envoy, black colored Envoy. And this seemed like a good opportunity. Fly back to Louisiana. It's a short 3 hour flight. She'd spend a few days with her friends and family, and then she would buy and take this new car. Well, new to her, it was a 2006, but new to her, and drive it back to Colorado. So it's a bit of a drive. It's about a 20-hour drive, but totally doable. And that's one of the things that kind of captured me to this story initially. I love a road trip, and I drove my black GMC that I had at the time to and from Atlanta, where I was living. Oh, I did not have a black GMC at the time, actually. I take it back. It doesn't matter. I drove from Atlanta to Tucson numerous times with Izzy, my dog, my old dog. And uh, and so I'm really familiar with some of the places that are mentioned in this story, and just the idea of driving by yourself for extended periods of time. I drove from Atlanta to Los Angeles, which was about 35 hours, and I was totally alone the whole time. So there's something to me very magical about a road trip. It's super fun with other people, but by myself, I love a road trip by myself. Neither here nor there. But that is something that caught my eye, caught my attention, because I've driven that route from Louisiana to Denver, actually. And that's the route that she's heading on. So on July 31st, 2022, Caitlin boarded a flight from Colorado back to Louisiana. She spent about 4 days soaking up time with loved ones. And on Thursday, August 4th, 2022, she was ready to head back to Colorado. She hugged her family goodbye one more time, got behind the wheel of her newly purchased Envoy, and set off on the long road back to Blackhawk. It was a drive that she was excited for, a symbol of, her fresh start is still happening. She had only been there a month, and now she has a fresh new car. But somewhere along this journey, something went terribly wrong. So the morning of Thursday, August 4th, she left her family in Houma, Louisiana, headed out on the 1,300-mile trek. According to her mom, Peg, Caitlin was in constant contact with both parents. Although her parents were divorced, Peg and Gordon, were getting regular updates from her, texts, calls, and check-ins from the road pretty regularly. Everything seemed to be going well, and everything seemed totally normal at first. By the next day, Friday, August 5th, Caitlin had made it into Northeast Texas. She'd pretty much gotten through the first major leg of her journey. But here is where things start to kind of go off the rails. So later, we don't know this now, but security cameras, bank records, things like that would later confirm that Caitlin made multiple stops across Texas in places that she really wouldn't have been traveling to. When you're traveling cross country, I'll speak for myself. When I've traveled cross country, I'm on the highways and that's it. Maybe if there's like a highway closure and you have to take a detour and go, or traffic, something like that, Google Maps or Waze will tell you exit here. And, you do like a little like loop around, but then you're pretty much back on the highway. And you don't really leave the highway when you're crossing through multiple states. So it was really clear to see where her route should have taken her. And some of these places, Mount Pleasant, Gladewater, Louisville, Gainesville, Paris, these stops don't quite make sense. And even if you're not familiar with the geography of Texas, which I am to a certain degree, but not these are tiny little places. If you plot out these stops on a map, they form more of a kind of horseshoe pattern, and Dallas is situated somewhat in the middle of there, which is weird because the most direct logical route from Houma, Louisiana to Black Hawk, Colorado would have had her going right through Dallas and not where she was. Her path, like, it looked scattered. It looked like she was driving this way, then turning around, then doubling back and getting confused is what you would think if you were looking at her like on a map. So after she reached Shreveport, Louisiana, so that city, Shreveport is right on the border of Texas. Shreveport, by the way. Her GPS should have told her to go west, straight through Dallas, and then up into New Mexico before hitting Colorado. Instead, she diverted northwest, skipping the fastest route entirely, which ended up putting her into Oklahoma. Now, she never needed to go to Oklahoma. Like, there's absolutely no reason for her to be passing through into Oklahoma whatsoever. So, like, why is she zigzagging across Texas? Why all these extra stops? And, now that we know that this trip did not end well, can't help but wonder, was she making these decisions? Like, was this her? Or was someone else controlling what she was doing at this point? So during this winding, kind of all over the place route, we come to understand that Caitlyn says her GPS navigation system wasn't working properly. Now, it's a 2006 car that she's driving. So the navigation system in it is not fantastic, I'm sure. However, it is 2022, so she has a cell phone. In fact, she has two cell phones, one for work and one for personal. So why, this is my question already, why the hell is she using the GPS system on her car that's super outdated and probably not even functioning that well? Well, I mean, it clearly wasn't. That's what she said. Well, she also claims that cell service was not really functional. Now, this, I think, is outside of being in the middle of the wilderness. I think that it is more and more rare for cell phones to not be working, especially when you're on major highways or near major cities. However, I have done this drive, and there are parts of Texas where, I mean, I can't figure out why, because there are it looks like there's cell towers, looks like there's plenty of people on the road, but there is absolutely no service. So, this is absolutely possible that when going through some of the more rural parts of Texas, she's losing service or getting spotty service. However, if she had been using her phone, and these are a lot of ifs, okay? If you put in an address into Google Maps, at least, because that's what I use, even when you lose service, it will continue directing you offline. If you have already put your route in, put where you're going in, which I think is a pretty normal thing to do when you're getting on the road. Sure, maybe you're going to make a stop at a gas station or something, but that's okay. You can still have your final destination in there. And that way, if you lose service, the map will continue directing you so you won't get lost. Seems like she wasn't doing that, and she was trying to rely on the car. Maybe she hadn't put in the address ahead of time, and so she couldn't put it in now. Either way, something is off. Shortly before 5 p.m., she calls her dad, and she told him she was confused. She said she was lost. She was having trouble finding her way back to Highway 271. And he said, okay, I'm going to stay on the phone with you. I'm going to talk you through it. I'm going to try and direct you back to the highway, like, just the best that I can. Because he's in Louisiana. He can be looking up, trying to figure out where she is and trying to give her directions. And that's exactly what he does. That is until her call drops and never reconnects. On her dad's end, all he hears is silence. And that was the last time that anyone would hear from Caitlyn. And her last Wi Fi connection and Gmail location, I guess Gmail in the background, I did not know this, is collecting location data unless you have that setting turned off. So they pinged at a place that made zero sense. The call to her dad had been made from a solar farm near a tiny rural town called Cunningham, Texas, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Cunningham, Texas is about 5 miles south of Bogota. If you don't know where that is, that's okay. This is really all you need to know is that Cunningham is not near a major highway. It's not on the way to anywhere, really. It's not at all where someone driving from Louisiana to Colorado should ever be, especially not someone whose, plan was to rely on highways and interstates. Like I said, when you're on a long road trip and it's not just a sightseeing, like, let's get off here and go to this restaurant. You have a destination, you're trying to like get there. You stick to the freeway. You don't wander off on unmarked roads and towns unless you have a reason. So that begs the question, for what reason was Caitlyn in Cunningham, Texas? Why did her cell phone drop off signal there? And why has she not been seen again? So, not long after Caitlyn's call with her dad that was dropped, something strange happened. That same evening, a 911 call came into local Oklahoma police. The report, a black SUV, one that very closely seemed to match Caitlyn's 2006 GMC Envoy, was seen driving erratically in a pasture, cow pasture near Highway 109 and 4340 Road. The location was rural Choctaw County, Oklahoma, just slightly over the Texas Oklahoma border, not far from that last ping near Cunningham. So there's a car weaving through a cow pasture. It's dark at this point. She called her dad around 5. This is several hours later. So a car weaving through a cow pasture in the middle of the night, or almost middle of the night. And yet no officers were dispatched. No one came to check it out, and the call was not followed up on. In the days after Caitlyn's disappearance and after this 911 call, there were several witnesses because at this point, when her family didn't hear from her, like the call dropped with her dad at first, he was like, okay, she's probably driving through a place with no service, but then he can't get a hold of her, and neither can anyone else in the family. And they're trying to call her all night long into the next day. And by the next morning, when they can't get a hold of her, they have to go to the police. But do they go to the Louisiana police? Do they go to the Texas police? They didn't know that she was near Oklahoma, so that wasn't in the picture yet. So I believe they went to the Louisiana police, and then that snowballed to the Texas police, and so on and so forth. So she's now officially missing. No one has seen or heard from her. And in the days following this, there were a few witnesses who came forward with chilling accounts because now there is a bolo out on her car, her license plate, her description is out. It is on the media, perhaps not enough, but it was on the media, and they're posting on social media, Facebook. People know that she's missing. So, one tip that came forward, uh, probably the most disturbing one, came from two people who said that they saw a woman matching Caitlyn's description in Paris, Texas. According to their story, they saw a white SUV pulled over on the side of the road. The SUV seemed to have car trouble, and there were two women standing behind this white SUV, apparently trying to push it, perhaps to a nearby gas station. But this anonymous witness, said that it wasn't the women standing outside the SUV that caught her attention. It was the woman in the back seat who looked very upset and appeared to be crying. She was not helping to push the car. She was not getting out of the car. She was just sitting there in the back seat crying. And she, from what this witness could tell, resembled Caitlyn. After the women pushed the SUV to the gas station, a dark colored SUV pulled up behind them. And it seemed that the light colored SUV people, the dark colored SUV people, they all knew each other. The people in the dark SUV got out and appeared to assist with the situation. Now, police did try to follow up on this, but they were never able to identify the people involved. The white SUV, the women pushing it, the dark SUV, all of these cars, all these SUVs and people seemed to vanish without a trace. And if the woman in the back seat crying, if that was Caitlyn, it was one of the last times that she was seen alive, which paints a, you know, terrifying possibility that maybe Caitlyn isn't just lost at this point. Perhaps she's being held against her will. So 1 week later, on August 12th, Caitlyn's dad is desperate. Her whole family is desperate. They are not really getting any kind of answers from the police. Yes, they put out a bolo. Her family is putting up flyers everywhere. Like her dad has now gone to is like the area where she was last known to be and is planning to just look for her and stay there until he finds her. And so flyers are being put up. Again, her family's doing everything that they can. Police are seemingly doing very little at this point. Again, there has been in some of my research people who said, well, that very well might be because she has what do they say, a checkered past with law enforcement. I'm not gonna get started on that and go down that road. I find that so offensive. So her family is desperate. Her dad is especially desperate and so sick of getting like no help, no information from authorities. So he decides, I'm taking matters into my own hand. So one of her brothers helped, and they took some piece of technology, I don't know, that's unclear, to Best Buy, to a Best Buy employee. And using the Find My iPhone app, they were able to pinpoint Caitlyn's last known GPS coordinates. Now, just a little aside here. If my sister had been missing for a week and it was police hadn't done this yet, they hadn't pulled her GPS coordinates yet, I would be beyond livid. I find it shocking that Caitlyn's poor father and brother had to do this and it hadn't already been done like immediately. And there's seemingly no explanation as to why it wasn't done. But he got the GPS coordinates. The coordinates led him to a private ranch in Frogville, Oklahoma, in the dense woods near the Kiamichi River. And what he found there was not what he was hoping to find. They did find Caitlyn's black GMC Envoy abandoned on this private gated community. The SVU, the SUV was wedged between two small trees, kind of balancing over this drop. There's a 75-foot drop to the river below, the Kiamichi River below. And basically, the way that I picture this, because I couldn't find a picture of it, is that someone was trying to push the car, or, yeah, they're not going to drive the car off, but push the car off of this kind of ledge, and it got stuck between these trees. And so it was just kind of teetering there. And they obviously thought, well, okay, we'll just leave it there. And then they left. Inside the car, the authorities found both of Caitlyn's cell phones, her personal and work cell phone, her wallet, her sneakers, her clothes that she was likely wearing, but no sign of Caitlyn. No visible signs of a struggle, no blood, no broken windows, no clear evidence of foul play in or around the car. It was just like her entire life that she was traveling with was left in the car. Nothing was stolen, and she had just vanished. Shockingly, or perhaps not shockingly at this point, law enforcement did not treat this area initially like a crime scene. According to Caitlyn's dad, who said, quote, they never taped it off, never roped it off. Anyone could have gone back there and stomped all over what could have been evidence. And the police are still doing next to nothing. So Caitlyn's family hired private search groups and volunteers, search dogs, and they organized their own searches of the property. So all these volunteers and search groups that he hired came and combed through the area around the SUV, and it's a private property, remember? So they really need to get permission. They didn't at first, I believe, but then it was clear they had to get permission. And sadly, the property owner's son said no and demanded that they leave. There was no forensics immediately done. Again, any search team or volunteers who were searching, search dogs, anything like that, any efforts that had been made were being made by Caitlyn's family, not the police. Detective Billy Jenkins was actually one of the only, not one of, he was the only officer who was willing to discuss anything with the media about the investigation. And it's not, he doesn't say much, but he did admit that no one conducted a proper search for the case when her SUV was discovered. He said, quote, "By the time we got the vehicle out, it was dark. It wouldn't have been feasible to find anybody or anything, I don't think." Really? You don't have flashlights? You don't have like spotlights? Are you kidding? Oh, really pisses me off. I can't even imagine what her family is going through at this point. So the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation did eventually step in, but much of their work was done pretty quietly for some reason, unbeknownst to me or anyone else at this point, from what I can tell. The records were sealed. Caitlyn's family was pretty much kept in the dark and knew nothing. The case was very frustrating at this point. They had no idea where Caitlyn was. There was no clear cause. There was no real cooperation from law enforcement, certainly no cooperation from the property owners. And again, no Caitlyn. So questions are clearly piling up at this point. And as I'm reading about this story and learning about it, I am like livid. If the property owners are innocent, why would you kick Caitlyn's family off of the property? They're looking for their missing daughter. If someone told me like they thought they misplaced their favorite sock on my property, I'd be like, okay, come on, let's look. Let's get like Indiana on the case. Let's find it. Like, how could you possibly, if you have nothing to hide, how could you possibly turn this family away? They are distraught. It just blows my mind. Like, why would you deny search teams? And why weren't the police pushing so much harder? I don't have the answers to that. There have been a lot of on the kind of crime forum boards, message boards and stuff that people have lots of different speculations and lots of different theories, local jurisdiction disputes, perhaps because this is, she's from Louisiana. She was driving in Texas. Now her car is found in Oklahoma. Okay, maybe, but like figure it out. Come on. And then a lot of people suspect that this case was dismissed, kind of not officially dismissed, but dismissed from law enforcement's minds because of her past, because she had a past with some type of, again, I don't really have the details, but some type of drug use, some type of DUI, alcohol abuse. I don't want to speak incorrectly about it. But that has, they're chalking it up to that she disappeared on her own. And as Caitlyn's family they are not believing this. And of course they're not believing it. She just bought a new car. She's loving her job. She's excited about her life. She has this fresh start that she's kind of been needing for a while. She was in great spirits. You know, somebody who is happy and excited and looking towards the future doesn't just wander off in a drug fueled like fugue state. I don't know. I don't really understand where the logic is in this. And neither did Caitlyn's family. So they're continuing to dig. And the more that they tried to dig and tried to get answers. It really felt like someone, something, some entity is just trying to cover things up. So, although there was a shocking lack of direction in this case and a shocking lack of police involvement, the police did eventually uncover one disturbing detail. I'm going to tell you the detail before I tell you my opinion. A woman who lived next door to the property came forward. She claimed that late on the night of August 5th, so that's the day where Caitlyn's call with her dad was dropped at 5, and then that weird 911 call came in later saying that 2 cars were driving through a cow pasture, remember, but it was never followed up on. So this neighbor claimed that late on the night of August 5th, she saw 2 cars speeding down the property's gated driveway, but that only 1 car came back out. She couldn't make out the details. It was too dark, but she remembered 2 sets of headlights arriving and only 1 set leaving, which, the implication is pretty clear that someone left Caitlyn's car behind and then someone else was the getaway car. I mean, could be useful, but also is it? This woman can't remember anything about the cars, couldn't see anything because it was too dark. Witness testimony is what it is. It's somebody's personal memory of an event, and that is just not that reliable often. So, thanks to Caitlyn's family continuing to try and dig into this and get some type of idea of what had happened. And then again, like I said, eventually the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, the OSBI, they did eventually get more involved. And so the combination of these 2 efforts, a rough timeline started to kind of emerge, piecing together cell phone tower pings, purchases at gas stations, and what's the third? The capturing her license plate, different streets that you're driving on, different, there's cameras everywhere. So license plate captures, pictures. So this is the timeline to the best of anyone's ability to kind of piece it together. At 5 p.m., that was Caitlyn's final call with her dad, which dropped just south of Bogota, Texas. Bogota, Texas. Now, Bogota is just over the border. So again, if we have Shreveport here, she crosses over into Texas, and here's Bogota. Her phone attempted to connect to Wi-Fi about an hour later on a rural road southeast of Cunningham, Texas. So Cunningham, Texas is about 15 minutes southwest of Bogota. Then another Wi-Fi attempt to connect near Cunningham again, but an hour, 50 minutes later. So she drops her call at 5 p.m. An hour later, she's only 15 minutes away from where the call dropped when it pings again. So she drove 15 minutes, and then what? And then what happened? Because there's still 55 minutes of time until her phone pings in Cunningham. And then again in Cunningham 50 more minutes later. So now it's 7. Then a little after 7, her phone pings near Pattonville, Texas, which is 17 minutes north of Cunningham. So if you kind of can see what I'm saying is that even if you can't picture this on a map, which I know it's a little bit confusing, guys, sorry. Bogota, Texas, she drops the call. And then an hour and 10 minutes later, she's in Cunningham, which is 15 minutes away, 15 minutes southwest. Tries to connect again. Another almost hour goes by, tries to connect again in the same place. So she's there for almost 2 hours. And then she's 17 minutes north of there when her phone does ping near Pattonville, Texas. And then 2 hours later, a license plate reader captures her SUV leaving Paris, Texas, which is only 15 minutes away from Pattonville. So again, we are 4.5 hours about is the time span with all of these pings or attempted pings. There's a 4.5 hour, 5 p.m. to 9:20 p.m. But realistically, she's going from Bogota to Cunningham to Pattonville to Paris, which is, it's not a straight line or anything. She's kind of going all over the place. But all of these little towns are only about 15 minutes away from each other. So she had to be doing things in these places or sitting in her car somewhere in these places. She wasn't just driving around the whole time, because if she had been, well, she would have been further. She wouldn't have stayed in the same like 15 to 30-minute radius. Then at 10:53 p.m., so again, the last time we have here is 9:17, a license plate reader captures her leaving Paris, Texas, and she's heading northwest. At 10:53 p.m., a 911 call was placed from her phone. We do not know if she managed to speak to an operator. There's no apparent recording of it. No officers were dispatched. There's no nothing. I don't even know how we know that, but we know that. I've seen that in several articles, that the her phone somehow connected to 911 at least briefly, but nothing ever came of it. So, which is hurts my heart, because clearly something was not right. As if we couldn't already tell that from her driving pattern and what's happening, the 911 call confirms that something was wrong. She was trying to get help, and help never came. Around 11:46 p.m., that's when it's estimated that her vehicle entered the gated property in Oklahoma, where it was later found. So this property is about 35 minutes north and slightly east of Paris, Texas. So she's leaving Paris, Texas, heading in that direction at 9:17 p.m., but she doesn't actually enter that property until 11:46 p.m. And about an hour prior to entering the property, she attempts to call 911. And then the OSBI releases a statement that comes across as kind of stunning and very annoying to me. They said that it's believed that someone other than Caitlyn was driving the vehicle when it crossed into Oklahoma, meaning that something had likely happened to her in Texas, and then someone else took her car and was driving it into Oklahoma with her things still inside, and then her car was dumped, but she was nowhere to be found. So first of all, how do you know this? I don't have the answer to that, guys. They put out this statement. I have no idea how they knew this. And if Caitlyn wasn't driving her car into Oklahoma, then who the hell was? At this point, there are a lot of red flags in this case. There are some theories, but none of them really make sense. So the only thing that does make sense is that most of the evidence, and I guess I should say lack of evidence, would suggest foul play. And remember, we didn't find any blood or broken windows or signs of a struggle or anything like that. However, okay, the mysterious white SUV with the woman crying in the back seat could be something, could be nothing. 911 call from Caitlyn's phone that was never acted upon. 2 cars entering this gated property and only 1 leaving. 2 cell phones left behind. Now, Caitlyn was trying to call her family, and her family was trying to call her after that call dropped. She had 2 cell phones. Neither of them worked at all. I mean, it is possible, but, and again, the bizarre fact that her iPhone, if she had put in her destination while she had service, it should have kept her route active, even if she lost service. And the questions that I have at this point are ridiculous. And I'm hoping that you have some of the same ones, because first of all, the private property where her car was found, it was gated, right? That was said multiple times. So how did fine, maybe there were 2 cars, maybe there was 1 car, we only have the eyewitness statement. So I'm just going to say, how would any car get back there if it was gated? Was the gate unlocked? Because obviously it isn't like this was abandoned private property, because the people who owned it wouldn't let them search for Caitlyn on there. So, did someone unlock the gate? And if so, who unlocked the gate? And what about her cell phone activity? Like, what about her actual cell phone usage? We can assume that the police aren't doing much with it because Caitlyn's dad is the one who had to go to Best Buy with her brother to get her GPS coordinates. But so she has two cell phones. You have got to be able to pull. I mean, I can't even think of a case that has taken place, since cell phones were prominent that we've covered on here that cell phone data hasn't become a big part of it. That police and investigators aren't looking into text messages and social media accounts and emails and the Notes app. I mean, think about the Caitlin Conley story we just had. That's way older than this story. They looked into every aspect of her phone. And I could find almost nothing about investigators like looking into her phone, looking into who she's been talking to, was like her call logs, her messages, her emails. Was she texting with someone? Was she in contact with anyone except for her family? What was she looking up on her Maps app when she did have service? Like, there are so many questions. Somebody's phone, and we did learn from the Caitlyn Conley case that got to make sure you have the right warrants to go through the phone. But somebody's phone is a treasure trove of insight into their life and what they are doing. Like, somebody could look at my phone right now and pretty much know exactly what I did today, where I went, what time I went, who I spoke to, all of it. So it blows my mind that this took place in 2022 and 2023, and there is almost no mention of anything that was found on her cell phone. To at least have, to at least certainly in the investigation to help like get some context. And then, of course, the question of, was she alive after her car was dumped? And that may seem like a strange question because we're hoping she is. Why, we have no indication that she isn't. And also, if her car was dumped, someone with a less positive outlook on life might think that's a bad sign. But the strange reports of sightings of Caitlyn did not stop after her car was found abandoned. In the weeks that followed, several people claimed to see someone matching Caitlyn's description. And both of these claims, there were several. I'm going to tell you about the two most specific tips that came in. And both of them claimed that the woman matching Caitlyn's description looked confused, disoriented, and alone or lonely. So one comes from Lake Texoma. It was a boathouse sighting. A woman reported that a confused young woman had been found sleeping in a friend's boathouse near Lake Texoma. Again, Lake Texoma is about, I don't know if I said this, about an hour and a half, 2 hours west of where her car was found in Oklahoma. So when this woman discovered this confused young woman sleeping in her friend's boathouse, the woman didn't really know where she was. And so they called the sheriff's department to do a welfare check on this woman. She was reportedly taken to Texoma Medical Center in Denison, Texas for evaluation. And they had a website for Caitlyn, find CaitlynCase.com, and people could post on there. And somebody posted on there that the girl that went to Texoma Medical Center in Denison, Texas, looked like Caitlyn. She said she looks like this girl. This was last week, maybe Monday or Tuesday. Nothing ever came of that. Like, nothing. There's the report, but who was the girl who went to the medical center? Don't know. Another tipster came in and said that they had seen someone who looked like Caitlyn at a Lone Star gas station a few days after her car was found, looking confused, alone, vulnerable. However, neither of these sightings, and there were others, were ever definitively confirmed. You know, it It is not out of the realm of possibility that when you circulate someone's face on the news, on flyers, on social media, that they're missing, and this is a person you've never seen before, people get confused, mistaken. People see someone and think like, oh, that looks like her, but maybe they're remembering wrong. So it's it's tough. This is these eyewitness reports or people who supposedly saw her. It's not super reliable. There was no official evidence tying Caitlyn to either of these supposed sightings. Still, the idea that she, might still be alive was promising or hopeful, I guess, gave hope. But then the thought that she's scared, confused, doesn't know where she is alone after all this time is heartbreaking. After not too long, the sightings and the tips kind of slowed down, and the momentum, if there was any momentum on this case, also slowed down. And Caitlyn's family didn't. They continued to try to keep her name, her picture, awareness out there in the world for over a year, while also waiting for updates, waiting for the police to do more, and waiting for, well, aside from waiting for Caitlyn, waiting for someone or anyone to find something. And then someone did. On October 13th, 2023, a landowner in Fort Towson, Oklahoma, made a grim discovery. While walking his property his property was just across the river from where Caitlyn's SUV was found, about a half a mile. He stumbled upon skeletal remains in a wooded area, specifically a skull. A further search of the area turned up more human remains and on another parcel of land. So the remains were spread a bit. And dental records confirmed that the remains did belong to Caitlyn Case. Her journey had ended, sadly, just a few miles from kind of where it derailed, wherever her car was left. But her death, it raised more questions than answers. Now, I have a little aside here for us because Caitlyn's family was pretty quickly very vocal about the fact that they were interested in pursuing wrongful death charges against whoever might be responsible for this. But the catch was that in Oklahoma, the statute of limitations for filing a wrongful death charge is 2 years. And with the investigation dragging on and, very few answers coming from anyone, there was concern that the clock could run out before they get the chance to take legal action. And the clock will run out, I believe, this October 2025. So the sentence, they wanted to file wrongful death charges, and the statute of limitations is only 2 years. It raised a lot of questions for me. And I don't know, this may be repetitive for some of you who are very well-versed in legalese and the law. I'm not. So I'm going to share this because it was interesting to me. So I was like, what is a wrongful death charge? A wrongful death claim is a civil lawsuit, not a criminal charge, and it's typically filed by surviving family members of a person who died due to someone else's negligence, misconduct, or intentional actions, which is super confusing to me. But examples include a car accident caused by a drunk driver, a murder or assault where no one was criminally convicted, but the family is still seeking damages. Again, that one still is a little bit gray to me. Medical malpractice or failure to act in a way that could have saved someone's life. So those are some examples of when a wrongful death claim may be filed. Wrongful death suit can result in financial compensation for things like funeral expenses, emotional suffering, etc. And so even if no criminal charges are ever filed, families can still pursue a civil wrongful death case. Think of it like O.J. Simpson being acquitted in criminal court, but being found liable in civil court. Now, that raised another question for me. I was like, well, what if you don't know who to sue? Like in this case, they don't have anyone specific to file a wrongful death claim against. And that is apparently one of the toughest parts to file a wrongful death lawsuit. The family doesn't need to know exactly who did it, but they do need a named defendant. So, an individual, a company, a property owner, and some evidence or legal theory tying that person, company, property owner, to the death. So, in Caitlyn's case, if her family believes someone on the property where her car was found was involved, they can name them. And even if criminal charges haven't been filed, which they haven't, a civil case could move forward, but they have to do it within the statute of limitations. So the statute of limitations seemed so small to me. 2 years in Oklahoma, 2 years from the date of death or discovery of the death. So her remains were identified in October 2023. They have until October 2025. And surprisingly, 2 years is a standard time frame in many states. The reasoning behind it being so short is to preserve evidence, to prevent people from filing claims decades later when proof may have faded, and to ensure that legal matters are handled in a timely way. Fine, I understand all of that. Critics of this, though, argue that it unfairly punishes victims' families, especially in cases where the investigation is slow, which is like this one. Evidence is delayed or buried, possibly this one, and the identity of the person responsible is unknown, definitely this one. Other states have the same statute of limitations. I just took a couple states: Oklahoma 2 years, Texas 2 years, Louisiana 1 year, California 2 years, New York 2 years, but they sometimes will extend it in certain homicide cases. Florida 2 years, Colorado 2 years. So I mean, like, it's pretty standard, which seems unfair. I side with the critics of this. I think it seems unfair. I understand the need to preserve evidence, but it seems like authorities, and I'm never trying to badmouth authorities. I'm only saying in this case, and from what I know about this case, it seems like they really have dragged their feet and not acted with any sense of urgency. So, like I said, they found Caitlyn's remains, but this left her family with more questions than answers because the medical examiner's office could not determine her cause of death. They ruled it undetermined while noting that there was weathering and damage from animal activity and equipment. I don't know, farm equipment? I'm not sure. No one was arrested. No suspects were ever publicly named. And the OSBI has remained very quiet about this case to this day, which is, I mean, this was not that long ago. Now, Caitlyn's family has their own set of beliefs, and they do believe that Caitlyn was the victim of foul play. They think perhaps someone picked her up or she was followed, that she may have been forced off the road, and that something or someone out there is responsible, which, yes, because people don't just vanish into thin air after like taking a joyride over some rural farmland when they've made a wrong turn. Not without a reason. Someone obviously is responsible. Someone knows what happened, and that someone or someones are still out there. Caitlyn's family is absolutely refusing to give up hope, especially her father, Gordon, who has stayed and lived in Oklahoma ever since her car was found. He did not go back home. He is completely determined and committed to finding out exactly what happened to his daughter. He said, quote, "There's something that's not right here. Somehow, some way, law enforcement is involved in this, and I'm going to get to the bottom of it." This is still an open investigation. Authorities are claiming they do want any information that you might have. So if this is something you know anything about, if you have any information regarding the disappearance and death of Caitlyn Rose Case, please contact the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, the Southeast Investigative Regional Office at 580-298-5525. And I will put that in the show notes. This is, I don't know. I have so much to say about this, but I know that me babbling on at the end of an episode is not something that probably anyone enjoys. And because this is still an open investigation, so many thoughts. I don't know. My my heart goes out to this family. I really, it is shocking. And again, I am researching this from my home, looking at what I can find online, listening, watching, finding everything that I can online, certainly. But, uh, I can only gather what I can gather from this. And what I gather is that there is something. I agree completely from what I can tell with her father. There's something off about this. Something awful happened to her, that's for sure. She did not just take a wrong turn, end up in a cow pasture, and then die. That didn't happen. So something terrible definitely happened to her. And it's mind-boggling how this case has been handled, and the lack of um, follow up, follow through, urgency, determination by anyone except for her family. I just, I try to put myself in their position. And I think if that was my parent or sibling, I would, what do you do? Like, what do you do if law enforcement is not helping you? I mean, you do what they've done, I suppose, and take it into your own hands as much as you can. But there's only so much that a regular person can do. Um, and it's mind blowing. The amount of questions that remain and the lack of information is really shocking to me. And I'm so sorry for her family and of course for Caitlyn. So I don't know. This is one where I really hope that this makes its way to someone's ears who knows something. And of course, I will continue to follow up on this case if there are any advances in it, which I hope to God that there are. So I will say thank you for listening. Please, please, please go leave a review on Apple. Comment, Lee. I see your comments on Spotify. I love you. Thank you so much for commenting so much. It makes my day. So please leave comments on Spotify because I enjoy it. And then on Apple, it really helps with discoverability. And I know it feels like gross and annoying to say that, especially after just talking about somebody's horrific loss. So I'll leave it at that. I hope you guys are having a beautiful week. I will be doing a true crime headlines later this week. And if you just can't get enough, head over to Patreon and join Patreon, where I share pretty much everything about my life. And to the people who are on Patreon, I appreciate you. And to everyone listening, I appreciate you. And that is the whole spiel. I'm done. Gross. That felt gross. All right. I will talk to you guys later. Please, I love hearing, I do love hearing your thoughts, your opinions, everything on these cases. And I do see a human GPS is sending me text messages. I love seeing the questions, hearing his thoughts. And I would love to hear from all of you, any of you. And I should have put this at the top of the episode, but I'm going to start saying this at the beginning of the episodes. Someone commented on YouTube that on a past case from many, 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 many months ago, but that they knew the victim. And they commented and they said, your information is wrong. You need to get your information right to respect the family. And to that, I say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Please tell me. I, I have never pretended like I am some full-time journalist. I'm absolutely always trying to find the most accurate, well-researched, well-sourced information and tell these awful stories in the most respectful way possible. But sir, I'm 100% certain I get it wrong. Absolutely. So if you know one of the victims, even if not, even if you just know that I'm incorrect about something, please don't hesitate. I would never be offended by that. I'm offended if you don't tell me that, because then I'm putting out misinformation into the world. So please, please, please send me a text, email, voicemail, submit a form on the website. Like, there are 18,000 different ways to get in touch with me. Let me know. And if there is ever, I almost cringe to say this, but if there is ever a friend or family member of a victim that I talk about on here, and you want to set the record straight, you want to share how you feel about hearing someone that you know or your loved one on a podcast, I would be more than willing to give any friend or family member of any victim's story that I cover an open floor to come on and share whatever you want. Absolutely. So just get in touch, and you're on. You can come on the podcast and absolutely say whatever you want or need to say. And again, please, if you hear something that I'm incorrect about, correct me. Let me know. I can do the best that I can do, but I'm wrong a lot. So, okay, that's it. Now I'm done. Love you all so much. Thank you for listening, and stay safe out there and have a fantastic Tuesday evening or whatever day you're listening. Okay, bye.
Death by Southwest is hosted by Jenna Schneider and Margot Carmichael.
Executive produced by Margot Carmichael.
Produced by Jenna Schneider.
Audio editing and sound design by Margot Carmichael.
Music by Soundstripe.
And a special thanks to Edward R. Murrow for letting us borrow his famous sign-off phrase, "Good night and good luck."